Right. Thank you for the introduction and having me today. My intent is to wow your audience and give them some quick actionable items to make their lives much better, not just better, but much better within 24 to 48 hours. All right. Good morning, everyone. This is going to be very difficult for me, not because I'm speaking to all of you, but because I'm doing it virtually and I have to sit in a small area so I don't get lost on the screen. But hopefully, you're not looking at my ugly mug. You're looking at the images that I have put together for you today. We're going to start with a little brain exercise to get the juices flowing because it is first thing in the morning. Coffee might not have kicked in yet for some of us. And that exercise is to envision a tree. I want you to shut your eyes, humor me. Shut your eyes, think of a tree. Think down to the very details. Maybe it's a tree when you were a child at your grandmother's with a swing on it. Maybe it's a palm tree from the last vacation you're on, you laid underneath it. Maybe it's a pine tree because you're going skiing and you love pine trees in the mountains. Whatever that tree is, just capture that in your head, down to the detail, get to the nitty gritty, and just hold on to that thought, and we'll circle back to it at the very end. Now, what I'm going over today is a lot of the human psychology and how we are our own biggest enemy, or we can be more often when we apply ourselves, our biggest cheerleader. And what's interesting is everything that happens to us in our lives, there's one thing that's involved in that, one thing that everything it has in common, and that is us. We're at the center of everything that happens. Whether we are an active role in it, a passive role, we are still part of everything that happens. So it's really important. What I want to get through to everyone today in the first several slides is how do we get rid of that inner dialogue that's negative, that's tearing us down, that restrains us from creating powerful habits, micro habits, which we'll get into today. And it is basically controlling those thoughts. I love this quote here: the smallest crowd you ever lead is yourself, but it's the most important one. John C. Maxwell. How true is that? All of us, many of us, I would imagine, actually all of us on this call, once I saw the participants, we are leaders and we are aspiring to be better leaders each day, I hope. And obviously, it's the intent to lead other people, to bring them collectively together to a shared vision, a shared purpose, and to accomplish goals, not just professionally, but personally in our families and communities too. But what we often overlook and we're always training on is how do we influence others? How do we be a leader of others? But until we lead ourselves and get things straight up in here, no one's going to want to follow us. So it's really important today that we focus first and foremost on ourselves, and not in a selfish way. I mean that in a humble way. Like, how are we bettering ourselves? How are we being more promoting of our interest and not that negative inner self dialogue that we have so often? And it begins with our thoughts. And interesting enough, we have over 50,000 thoughts per day. I don't know how they came up with that, but somehow they did. And the studies have shown 50,000 thoughts per day from the moment we wake up till the moment we fall asleep. And by the way, a lot of this, our thoughts keep spinning when we're trying to fall asleep. We have thoughts, though, from the beginning till the end. Now, a lot of those thoughts just come and go like the wind or the weather, but some of them we harness. Are they always worthwhile? Are they productive thoughts? Oftentimes they're not. Again, we are hardwired with this thing called a negativity bias. It's from the dinosaur days when we're running from saber-toothed tigers. But today, in the modern world, we don't necessarily need that type of instinctual behavior internal, that self-preservation mode. So it's really important that we're mindful of the thoughts that go through our heads, because thoughts, mind you, have great power. Everything that we have today began with a thought. Our smartwatches, the infrastructure we drive to work on, our laptops, our homes, all of it began with a thought. World wars began because of a thought. Peace has become a thought, or has come out of a thought. So I say that so everyone takes very seriously the thoughts that go through their head and the thoughts of others when they convey them in actual dialogue. Now, here is our good old friend Houdini. I don't care what age you are, everyone's heard of Houdini. He's the greatest escape artist of all time. Well, back in the day before modern media and all that good jazz, he used to go early to each town when he was putting on a show, and he would have the local sheriff lock him in a jail cell with the community leaders and the local press that would be there with their notepads taking notes for, in the newspapers at the time. And one stop he had, which he wrote in a memoir, was one of the most devastating parts of his career and his psychology of, self empowerment, was when he met a sheriff who was a little bit of a jokester. And what he did in front of all the community leaders in the press is he put Houdini in the jail cell, like usual process, but he faked locking the cell. He faked turning the key, or he turned it the wrong way, whatever it was. And as you can imagine, Houdini tried and didn't get out. He tried again and it was still locked. He tried maybe 6, 7 times until he gave up. And the reason I tell that is not because, oh, wow, Houdini made an embarrassment of himself. No, poor him. We all do that to ourselves. But if the greatest escape artist of all time can be held prisoner by his own limited thoughts, his own tunnel vision, his own closed mindset, then who are we to stand against it? So let's not be like Houdini. Let's be curious and let's control those thoughts we have. One other story I want to hammer home here regarding thoughts is a Cherokee tribal story. And it goes like this. The elder would bring all the youth of the tribe together around a bonfire, and it was part of their rite of passage into young adulthood. And he would tell a story. And the story is of these two wolves. And he would say, with dead seriousness, how each of us are born with two wolves inside of us. And day in and day out, they are fighting each other viciously. They are scrapping, they are biting, they are clawing, and they fight all the time from the day we're born until the day we go up 6 feet under. And eventually one of the young children raises their hands, or the teens, and says, well, which one wins? And here is the moral of the story. The elder says, the one you feed. Now, if the Cherokee Indians way back when could identify the power of our inner thoughts, that self-narrative that we have, and tell a story to ingrain in all of their upcoming young adults, that you have these two voices in your head. One is very productive, it's kind, it's supportive, it's light. The other one is dark, it's menacing, it's destructive, it's an antagonist. And the reason we have these two wolves is because they serve purposes, but the part that we lose control, or we should have control over, but we lose mindset over, is which one are we feeding? When you got up today, what wolf were you feeding? Did you hit traffic? Did your kids make you late to get on this meeting? Did your coffee spill on you? Maybe you had a great morning. Maybe it's your birthday and you had a lot of birthday wishes on your phone when you woke up. Each time you have an instance in your life, an occurrence, an event, outside events, they affect those inner thoughts, and it helps to determine, or it does determine, which wolf you're feeding. So mind you which wolf you're feeding, and make sure you're feeding the right one. Now, I'm going to throw you for another bender here. This is Philadelphia. I know it's a mood point because they're not doing too good lately, the Eagles. But what is Philadelphia? What is their tagline? What are they known for? What have they spent billions in marketing for? If you drive up and down the turnpike, you see the billboards year round. Here it is. If I can get this to work, there we go. It is the city of brotherly love, right? And that's the famous piece of art that's now indoors because I think somebody spray painted on it. That gets into my next slide is Philadelphia the town of angry fans? I mean, let's be real here. Philadelphia was the first sports league to institute an actual judicial system in their stadium. So when fans were unruly, they would literally try them before they even left the premise. It's also Rocky Balboa town, right? So when I ask you, Philadelphia, which is it? The city of brotherly love, or is it the city of Rocky Balboa and angry fans that'll throw snowballs at you and rip your jersey off if you're from the opposing team? It's not about who's right or wrong in that. This is what we need to do with our minds. We need to stay curious as a habit. It's why do we see things differently? So if we were in a room today, I would ask somebody, why do you think not the Eagles, Philadelphia is a city of brotherly love? And then I'd ask the next person who has the opposite point of view, why do you think it's a dangerous city full of thugs and crime? And instead of arguing back and forth over our opinions, I'd ask them to be curious as a first habit and ask the other person, why do you see it differently? Why do we see this so differently? When we question our inner thoughts, and then they affect our outer dialogue, we're much more successful than when we go with the knee-jerk reactions of the shows we watch nowadays, like reality TV and 24/7 media and social media, where everyone has a platform and a voice and nothing is substantiated. We always need to have that initial habit as it relates to our thoughts. And when we create physical habits, is that we have to always remain curious. Take that chief problem solver hat when you're at work or when you're at home and be curious. If someone has an opposing point of view on your team, ask them why that's so. If one of your children argues with you, ask them, why are we seeing this differently? It's amazing the dialogue you'll have and a much more productive outcome. So little by little, a little becomes a lot. And before we can run, we all have to learn how to crawl. So I want to get into micro goals. And what are micro goals? They're small, they're manageable actions, and they support a larger objective. You know, we're almost at that time, New Year's, where everyone makes resolutions, or a good number of us do. And statistically, if you Google it, I think, New Year's resolutions are overwhelmingly doomed to fail. They don't last more than a couple months per the surveys and data they've been polling every year. And the part that I want to get through to people today is these micro goals will help us sustain through the year and meet those metrics, whether it's performance at work, health, spirituality, family, community, whatever it may be. It's all about setting these micro goals, because micro goals, they help us focus on what we can realistically achieve in the short term. And sometimes it's just a few minutes each day, and it's like a snowball effect, a domino effect. It builds and builds and builds until it becomes a well-established habit that's grown bigger and bigger and bigger. So I pose to each of you, unless you're a Tibetan monk like this fellow here on the slide. Really should have brought some water. My mouth getting dry. Sorry, I'm gonna have to use the coffee. If you're a Tibetan monk, you're not gonna have a conversation maybe every day, but the regular Joes like us, we're gonna have a conversation every day, if not externally with people on our teams, at our work, or at home, or in our communities, definitely internally. Because remember, 50,000 thoughts per day, gang. So it's really important that we treat this inner voice, this dialogue, our thoughts, as something to be intentional and deliberate about. We don't just want to go through our days like so many of us do, just harnessing and hanging on to any thought that comes by. And usually it's the bad thoughts. They're much more readily available because we have that negativity bias. And a lot of times we play the victim. I mean, if you look at the modern world and society today, there's a lot of people out there pointing the fingers at others and playing the victim, when really they have the power to take control of what they have influence over and create a better dynamic, a better outcome. So as we're working through these micro goals, my mom would tell me when I was a kid, listen, you have 2 ears and one mouth. Or excuse me, yeah, 2 ears and one mouth. So you better listen to me twice as much as you talk to me. And I love that quote by Stephen Covey, that most people, they don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And I don't know about you, I'm an Italian, Irish background. So when my family gets together, like we just had over Thanksgiving, we do not listen with the intent, or we do listen with the intent to reply. We actually talk over each other. We steal the conversation. We interrupt. We get frustrated. And yet we're doing it out of love. But it's a shame when we do that outside of those circles. We do it to people at work. We do it to our own children, our spouses. We talk over each other. We have that closed-minded narrative, that inner thought that's telling you, I'm right, I'm right, I'm going to prove them wrong. And whatever they say goes in one ear and out the other. We take no mention or thought of it. We don't consider why they see things differently. And what's it become? It becomes a struggle. It becomes a breakdown. It becomes a failure. So when we're in that mode, when we're seeing things so strong that we have that opinion that this must be right, that self-dialogue that says, I can never lose weight, or I can never go to the gym, or I can never meet my sales goal, we need to think of a revolving door. Not a revolving door. We need to think of a glass door. Revolving door is fun too, but a glass door for this instance. Now, if I were standing on the opposite side of that door looking out at all of you, my reality would be pushed to open the door. Your realities would be pulled to open the door. Now we're in the same environment under the same circumstances pretty much, but we have two different realities. So that's why we need to question things and say, why do we see things differently? If I don't believe I can meet this goal, I don't believe I can do X, Y, and Z, we need to question that and see, what is the other perception? What is option number two? There's always more than one option in everything in life. I task every one of you to do that. Anytime you come across something that's very hard, that you're getting angry about, you see the closing of options, the narrative is, I only have one way to go, settle yourself down, get in your mind, and ask yourself, what is the other perspective? What is the other option I have? So little by little is the theme. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. Micro goals, they have that unique ability to turn intentions into action by stripping away the pressure of perfection and focusing on the progress instead. Too often we're looking at that perfection when we set goals at work, like a year-end goal or even a quarterly goal. And if we fall behind in week 2, week 3, or month 1, month 2, or let's just say we fall behind somewhere between the beginning and the end, we start getting that negative narrative. We start doubting ourselves, and then our doubt becomes fuel and self-fulfillment, and we start falling further and further behind. Micro goals keep us on track. It's about celebrating the milestones, the little victories along the way, and it helps us sustain during the hard times, the rocky times, when we might take a few steps backwards. Because by concentrating on what you can do right now, instead of everything you should be doing, you'll find it easier to stay engaged, motivated, and resilient, even when life is unpredictable. So like this slide here, Mount Everest, if we were all, let's say, professional climbers, I've yet to meet one in my life so far, but someday I will meet someone, hopefully, that climbed Mount Everest. But in any event, we're going to pretend today we are each professional climbers, and our goal is to climb Mount Everest. Mount Everest, the peak we see on the screen there, that's like our year-end goals. That's like our New Year's Eve resolutions. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, as it's been tokened in the past, which I don't understand why they'd call a goal hairy. But in any case, that's beside the matter. So we have these BHAG goals and we're looking to get very much to the top because without getting to the top, I don't have success. That's the way our minds work. But like any professional climber in reality that's going to Mount Everest, they have what they call base camps. So at every several thousand feet, there's a base camp where they stop, they collect themselves, they get more oxygen, they re-energize physically, they re-energize mentally. And without stopping at these base camps, the reality is no one would ever be able to reach the peak of Mount Everest. And I challenge each of you today is to look at micro goals as your base camps. These are the little stepping stones when you get maybe a quarter of the way to goal, that you have a metric where you acknowledge it, you reward it, even if it's just yourself, yell out loud, woohoo, pat yourself on the back. Little things like that create positive emotions, and those emotions affect and influence how our reality is each day, especially when we're in teams. I was a VP of sales in my past. Excuse me. And as the VP of sales, we had to set metrics, of course. And when some of my team members had a big, hairy, audacious goal, they had to reach X amount of money by the year end, calendar year end, or fiscal year end. Sometimes they fall behind. Maybe quarter two, they fall behind. So instead of, if you have just one vision looking at the peak of Mount Everest, once you fall behind, you usually stay behind. And then you actually regress backwards further and further. Whereas if you set micro goals, AKA these base camps, when you get to these little micro goals, it re-energizes you, it reboosts your confidence. So maybe after Q1, you hit it and you're happy, you congratulate yourself, or you do something to celebrate your team because they hit their goal. Then you work on Q2. And if they're behind Q2, we have them still focus on what they've done year to date. And we'll get into that soon. Right here it is actually. The Gap in the Game by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. It's a very, very easy to read book. And I challenge every single one of you to go out and get it. If you listen to it, that's great. I don't know about you, but I need to read it because I take notes all over the place. But whatever suits you, please go out and get this book. I have no financial, gain by you getting this book. I just thought it was very impactful for me and the teams I've led. And I think it would be instrumental for you, especially if you're struggling to move that needle, to get ahead in your life personally and or professionally. Or if you have teams that are struggling to meet their metrics and they're falling into self-doubt and being their own antagonist. So as you can see here on the chart, we start with when we set goals on the far left bottom corner. Let's imagine that to be January and we're a sales team. So we set our year-end sales goal. Now, as we get through the months and months, maybe we're at June and that's our current state. What do we usually do? We look ahead at that gap. We see the ideal state, the peak of Mount Everest up there on the top right-hand corner. And it looks so daunting and we're tired because we're 6 months into the 12-month year and we don't know what to do because we're starting to slip. And that gap seems so menacing. It seems like it's getting longer and larger and larger. And the ideal state, that goal that we want, what we think is perfection, is slipping further and further away. Well, what they pose in the book is when you're at that current state, whether it's a month, 6 months, 3 quarters into the goal, to the yearly goal, you look backwards. You look at that gain. Always keep your eye and attention where you need to be, but spend more time looking over your shoulder and saying, wow, look how far we've come. When you have a sales team, like in this exercise here, we're all sales reps, we may be behind goal come mid-year. But if you have that meeting with your team, hopefully quarterly, not biannually, and you look backwards and talk about each individual and the successes and milestones they've reached, the various base camps that they've passed from January through June, you're going to create a more you will create a more advanced thinking team. They're going to be in a state of wonder and curiosity. Remember that habit of curiosity instead of a state of resignation. I can't do this. It's not possible. Which reminds me too, I love this quote from Abraham Lincoln. Not that I'm a Lincoln connoisseur. I don't know much about him other than I love this quote. And it is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And it's so true. What we set our minds out to do usually becomes our reality. So if we think we're going to be a failure, too often that's going to perpetuate and we're going to become a failure. If we think we have a chance, we're going to make that goal and give it our best, most likely you're going to get to that goal or fall maybe just a bit short. So it's really important that we keep thinking through our thoughts, as weird as that sounds. We want to process our thoughts like we would process data on a spreadsheet. Some thoughts are going to be very powerful and they're going to be moving and they're going to help us. Other thoughts are going to be equally powerful and they're going to move us backwards. It's going to put us in regression. And it's important that we figure out which ones those are and decide to focus on the ones that best serve us. One of the mental questions I always have when I'm facing a difficult situation I always think in my head, I'm like, the two thoughts I have, because there's usually two, at least two, is this going to help me or hurt me? Very simple. When you have a thought and you're about to react to the person that you're talking to with a difference of opinion, or you're mapping out your goals and where you are to where you need to be, you need to look at those thoughts and filter them out into two silos. Is this thought going to be productive? Is it going to encourage me? Is it going to help me? Or is this thought just going to trash me? It's going to tear me down. It's going to keep me in a state of resignation. It's very simple, but yet not easy, because usually we're flying through the days. Like, I'm getting all excited here, trying to sit in the square for you. And I'm probably talking too fast, so forgive me. But we go flying through our days and we forget to really be deliberate and intentional about the filtering of our thoughts, because they do dictate the realities of our days. In this picture here, I want you to think of yourself looking into the mirror, and reverse this picture actually, and think that you're looking at your older self in the mirror. There could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, whatever you pick. And your older self is happier, is healthier, is more financially sound, is more successful. And of course, you want to ask your future self some questions. Now, imagine you can ask your future self two questions and get those answers back in return. Two questions. And I ask myself this on a routine basis, maybe weekly, sometimes daily, depending on the state of my mind. And that is, what should I start doing today? Think about that. What should I start doing today? And the second question is, what should I stop doing today? It's a great question to ask yourself. It's a great question to pose to the people that you lead when you're having coaching sessions, one-to-one, or just a meaningful conversation to get them engaged and on track with goals. Ask them, if they met their successful future self, what would that person tell them to stop doing and start doing? It is a profoundly impacting little exercise to do. I've been doing it for years, and it really helps, because let's be honest, we are not going to BS ourselves. If someone else asked us that, like I said, to do with staff, employees, team members, they might give you some canned response, but when they walk away, they're going to be thinking about, I trust you. Trust me on that. I mean, but what is that? We're not going to BS ourselves. If you ask yourself, what should I stop doing today and what should I start doing today to reach that best self? You're going to get some real candid answers, and you're going to know what you need to do. And it's going to give you a better sense of urgency to take action, because again, that negativity bias, we can harness it now to be a positive influence, because we're so hard on ourselves. When we ask those two questions, we're going to be brutally honest and truthful. And hopefully we're probably going to hold ourselves more accountable than if somebody else were doing it externally. Some of the quick things with micro habits that I want to go over here. So you're wondering, all right, so I understand micro habits. Let's kind of regroup here, as I'm kind of talking fast. Forgive me. It's the coffee that I'm drinking and not the water. So if you think about it, micro habits are really quick little things that we can do daily. It could just be several minutes of our day. And in doing them, it's about the repetition. It's about getting those little successes under your belt, because that fuels more and more successes. What I have here on the screen, and I always use Outlook for my little triggers, my little reminders, because if we're not at our laptops, I put my phone somewhere so it wouldn't bother me today, but we have those lovely smart devices on our wrist, in our pocket. So you really can't get away from your Outlook. If you see there, I'll put read for 5 to 10 minutes. These are just some of my personal examples. So I do that typically right before lunch, and it pops up on my phone if I'm in a meeting, or it glares at me on my laptop if I'm sitting here staring at it. And the reason I put it there is because it always reminds me. It doesn't mean I always do it. In fact, this is the one time I tell people on your Outlook to make an alarm on it, that if it's on your phone, it'll vibrate, it'll ping. You don't want it too obnoxious, because it'll catch you in meetings sometimes. But you definitely want to have some kind of physical alert. So why I tell you to do that is there's times where that alert will come up 3 days in a row. It comes up, it vibrates in my pocket. I look down, I hit silence or conclude or close. And it does that. It makes me mentally prepare, or mentally hold myself accountable. Even if I'm not doing it, the fact that I have to silence it from vibrating in my pocket, it's another trigger to remind me, like, oh, you didn't do that again today, Jim. You didn't do it again. So it strengthens the likelihood that I'm going to start reading for 5 to 10 minutes, or I'm only going to skip a couple days. Or if I skip a couple days, I'm definitely going to not skip the next day, because I'm starting to feel guilty. Another one, which I love, I use in the morning, typically, at 8 a.m., you can see right there, is I ask myself those series of 2 questions, 3 questions. What is most important in the next hour? By noon, and then by 5 p.m. Man, that's a game changer. I'm telling you, just put that in your outlook. Try it for just a week. Life is nothing but a bunch of experiments. Try these experiments and latch on to the ones that work for you. When I ask myself this, it gives me extreme clarity for my days. Now, of course, things happen. Days can go sideways. People call and ask for things out of the blue, and special requests come up. But I'm still focused on the goal. I still know in the back of my head I need to get these things done by lunch. I need to get these things done by 5. And I love that reminder because, like I said, it gives me such clarity in a simple practice that I know each day whether I'm on track or not. I don't go through weeks or months and then look back and say, oh my gosh, I'm really falling behind. It makes sure that when I do fall behind, I'm cognizant of it and I'm much more forward thinking that, all right, I got to get back on track. I got to get back on track. So when we create these habits, these micro goals, and these micro goals are, micro habits, you can interchange the words. There's what they call the 3 R's of our habit formation. The reminder, which I just went over with us, it's that cue or the trigger. It's so it starts the habit. I like to use Outlook. Like I said, it always vibrates. In fact, my family kids with me because we'll be at home and I have an evening reminder, a gratitude reminder, and it vibrates. And I was like, oh, that's one of your reminders, isn't it? It's funny, but it's not because it's actually working. And, the longer I do it, the more they're interested. And even the kids are trying to do it, which is, I guess, proof in the pudding this can work. So we have the reminders set and the reminders cue us so we have a routine. And by keeping that routine, it keeps us on track. It's little by little, a little becomes a lot, like the narrative here, the overreaching tagline in this presentation. So the reminders trigger a routine, and then the routine, as we get into it and we start getting through base camps, passing those mile markers on our journey, we have to have a reward. It could be whatever you think is a reward. I coached a woman that was very down on herself. She was a strong VP, but for whatever reason, her self-image was fractured. She was going through a divorce, and she was very negative. She was self-imploding. So what she figured out to do as a routine, or excuse me, as a reward, is anytime and every time she did execute that routine, that morning exercise, that midday question, she would, after each day of meeting those micro goals, she would write a letter to herself, congratulating herself, telling her how great it is at what she's done and the learning experience from it. And then she would keep a box of these letters. And when she got through into the rough times where she was falling down, where she was having trouble staying the path and keeping on a routine, she would get that box out and she would just reread through some of those letters. And it gave her a much fuel in the fire to get her back on track. So think right now, I'll give you a little pause so I can slow down my talking, but think right now what kind of rewards you would like for yourself, for your teams, for your family, whatever it may be. Because the reward is often overlooked, especially when it's for ourselves. Well, I don't need to reward myself. That seems kind of egotistical. That seems wrong. I'm not saying go out and buy a new car. Some people might do that. That sure is a reward. I'm saying little things, maybe a piece of chocolate, literally pat yourself on the back, smile at yourself, write a letter to yourself, whatever that may be. Some people, there's swear jars. Some people have a reward jar. Every time they meet that goal, they put some money in it. And then at the end of the month, end of the year, they use it to buy something for themselves, to go to the spa, to do whatever. So again, we have the 3 R's when we're creating these micro goals, these micro habits. The reminder, what reminders you use, that's up to you. Like I said, Outlook has been great for me. It's not super sophisticated and it's always with me and on my phone or my laptop. And it creates the routine. So it happens habitually. I'm looking at these reminders. I'm hopefully following through with what they're queuing me up to do. And then eventually I reward myself, whatever that may be. Usually with myself, it's just a little bit of empowering self-coaching, some self-talk that's, I'm actually being my own friend. I'm congratulating myself instead of tearing myself down. Excuse me. So let me move. Oh no, get back there. Oh boy. This is where I might need the help. We talked about this yesterday. If somebody's there, let's try to get back. Oh, go back. While they're working on this. So micro goals, it's about your future self. And because you may not meet people where you need to meet people where they are, excuse me. These micro goals, they meet you where you're at mentally, emotionally, and logistically. They're not those stretch goals where you're looking at Mount Everest, you're looking way down the road on a 100-mile journey. You're looking right in front of you. You're looking at that next mile marker you're going to pass, that next rest stop, that next base camp as you're climbing. So instead of demanding like major time or energy investments, these micro goals, they're only asking for small actions that feel doable. And when things feel doable, you're not going to pull yourself backwards. We all like a challenge, but let's be candid. The easier things are, the more it becomes ingrained as a habit. And let's see here. Oh, yeah.
When I was 15 years old, I had a very important person in my life come to me and say, "Who's your hero?" And I said, "I don't know. I got to think about that. Give me a couple of weeks." I come back 2 weeks later. This person comes up and says, "Who's your hero?" I said, "I thought about it. You know who it is?" I said, "It's me in 10 years. So I turned 25 10 years later. That same person comes to me and goes, "So are you a hero?" And I was like, "Not even close. No. She said, "Why?" I said, "Because my hero is me at 35. So you see, every day, every week, every month, and every year of my life, my hero is always 10 years away. I'm never going to be my hero. I'm not going to attain that. I know I'm not. And that's just fine with me because that keeps me with somebody to keep on chasing." So to any of us, whatever those things are, whatever it is we look up to, whatever it is we look forward to, and whoever it is we're chasing, to that I say amen. To that I say, all right. And to that I say, just keep living, huh? Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So hopefully everyone knows Matthew McConaughey. I might have a man crush on him. I think he's great. If you ever read his book, Green Light, it's fantastic. It's about, that inner dialogue, that self-quest to better yourself. And it's basically about his upbringing in his life. And what's amazing is if you get it on Audible, it's him talking and he's got that voice, that really captures you and draws you in. So, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey is a great book, another book for you all to read or get on Audible. I highly suggest if you do listen to books, or even if you don't, that'd be the first book to get on Audible. So what he was saying there is basically he's never satisfied where he's at, but he's not looking way too far. He's celebrating he's celebrating what he achieved, and he's looking now at next steps. He's looking now at what can be done. Instead of how should I say this? He sees himself making regular progress and small little progress. It boosts his self-esteem. If you read his book, he did not have the highest self-esteem in his youth and growing up. He actually had a problem household and he had a rough childhood. So what he did is he set these goals for himself so that he was always pursuing his best self. He was never trying to perfect himself. It was about bettering himself. And that speech I thought was pretty funny, especially if you've never seen the movie Dazed and Confused, because that's what his last quote there is from. And Matthew McConaughey, I give him a lot of credit. I think he's a good human being and someone that we can aspire and learn from if we read his book. And I think he has a few other ones. So let's get back to that tree, and then we're going to break into questions and some more data here about micro habits and also recruiting. I think they said something about recruiting, so I can answer questions about that. Certainly that is our business, but this here is about your self-development, being your best leader, and then when you are your best leader, others will follow, and then they will be more productive as well. So circling back here, here's that tree, that lovely tree. If you were all in the audience, which I'm used to seeing people in the audience, I would ask, how many of you envisioned your tree that was a pine tree? And people would raise their hand and I'd ask them to explain it. People would get down to the detail, a little snow on the pine needles and the pine cones. Others would describe a palm tree that was swaying in the wind while they're laying under it on a beautiful sandy beach. Others would have a story of their grandma's house with a tree like the one on the screen and a rope swing hanging on it that they used to swing on for hours on end as a child. And then after everyone gets excited explaining their trees with great passion and emotion, I'd ask the question to the audience, how many of you thought of the roots? And maybe in a crowd of 100, less than 5 people would raise their hands. And what I pose to you is that the roots are our micro habits. Roots are those milestones. Roots are those base camps that without them, we can't grow bigger and stronger and flourish. Without them, teams can't get bigger and stronger and more vital. So whenever you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're looking at your team or you're looking at your teams, always think of the roots. Think down to the root. What is going to be the micro habit that makes you a better person tomorrow? And then the next day you follow up on that. It's little by little, a little becomes a lot. And with that is a picture of the roots. I knew I flew through this. Excuse me. I am sorry, gang. Not used to doing it on a screen. I hope you took some notes from it. There is more. But I want to open up for questions now that we're running close to the end here. I had to jam a bunch in 45 minutes. And let me see if I can get up here in the Q&A. Okay, no questions yet. Well, while there's no questions, I'm going to go over some examples of micro habits. So let's say you want better physical health. I would suggest setting micro goals like before hopping in the shower each morning, drop and do 5 push-ups, do 5 sit-ups. And this is a true story. I actually have a friend of mine years ago that struggled with his weight, and he got to a really dark place where he felt his wife didn't, he thought that his wife looked at him like he was disgusting. He felt like his kids didn't look up to him, and he just started losing his charisma, his self-love, and he just went to a dark place. And he did go to the gym every New Year's, but being a bigger guy, he'd go in there and he'd look around. He said, these are not my people. I feel awkward, not a place. So he would exit. And within 2 months, he'd cancel that membership. So I think after like the third year of him doing that, I asked him simply, kind of jokingly, I said, listen, you take a shower every morning, right? And of course he does. I said, every morning when you jump in that shower, before you jump in that shower, as weird as it sounds, I want you to get on the floor and do 5 push-ups and 5 sit-ups. And he humored me and he did it. And within 6 months, I think he was up to doing like 30 push-ups and 30 sit-ups. He had lost some weight, not as much as he had wanted, but he was on the right path and he was glowing. He was more engaging with his family. His wife told me he was, he had more energy and he was doing more stuff with them. He was happier at work. So it's amazing how in that instance, that little story there, true life example, how doing something little that we would overlook and maybe laugh at and say, that's not going to help me. I want to lose 50 pounds. That's a joke. No, it's not. When you create these little micro habits, these micro goals, little by little, a little becomes a lot. Another micro goal, let me see here. I think I have some examples for you. I know my wife and I, years ago, since COVID, we got into the steps challenge. We want to get 10,000 steps a day. And if we don't, we're like upset. We're teasing each other. It's like a competition. So now with our watches or whatever you use, you can count your steps each day. And getting enough steps is really a beautiful thing. It gives you more energy. It makes you more clear-minded. It makes you a better person. You're happier. You're healthier. So again, little by little, a little becomes a lot. Start out by setting a goal to do 3,500 steps a day. Just 3,500 steps a day. There's apps for that on your watch, on your phone. You obviously have to wear the watch or have the phone on you so it counts your steps. But in modern times, let's not kid ourselves. We're pretty much glued to these things. So ask yourself, and maybe your spouse or your significant other, what should we set as our steps challenge? And do it now. Don't wait till New Year's. It doesn't have to be a hokey thing. Of January 1st, you do it. Start it now, because little by little, you're going to create those habits. You're going to get more and more steps in. And before you know it, you're going to feel healthier. And just by feeling healthier, you're going to push yourself more and get to 10,000 steps. And then you're actually going to be healthier. And it's just a beautiful domino effect. It makes you, put you in the better self in the future, that future self that's more successful and happier. It brings you closer to that person. Another one is, pack a lunch rather than eat out. I don't know how many of us are going to the office every day since COVID rocked our world, but it's important. Instead of eating out, I know some of us, myself included, I eat out a lot because I'm visiting customers or I'm having coffee appointments, too much coffee at times. So it's important that I pack a lunch when I'm going to the office, multiple days a week, because what that does, it makes me think ahead. Instead of being at a restaurant, sitting in front of somebody I know, a client, a customer, a coworker, and ordering something that looks delicious on the menu, I pack a lunch. And actually, instead of the lunch meetings, let me rewind that. I do more coffee meetings now, or I'll just drink water if I'm having too much coffee. But now I do a lot of coffee meetings instead of lunch, because I was doing all those lunches, and it adds up. Financially, it adds up, and it adds up around your waistline. So think about that. When you pack a lunch, it makes you more deliberate. And also, just by packing your lunch in the evening, you go to bed with a little more sense of fulfillment. It's another accomplishment. You can check the box off during that day. And little accomplishments add up and create bigger accomplishments down the road. If you want to have better mental health, journal for 5 minutes every night. I thought that was, kumbaya stuff when my business coach asked me to do it years ago, but I started and I journaled. And what I did is I would journal 3 things I'm grateful for. It could be, I'm grateful for the sun shining today. Monday, I said, I'm grateful for the kids being home and playing outside most of the day and not running around distracting me and my wife working from home. So by adding that into our days, I was a little grateful for gratitude journaling. It creates a better mindset, a healthier mindset. It also creates inner dialogue that it trains you to look around the world for things that are good. Because too often we're looking around the world and we're looking for things that are bad, what's wrong, what's broken. So journaling is a good thing. Another one, actually, my wife just institutionalized this past year, and it's been working. We have 4 kids ranging 9 to 16. And for those of you who have kids at that age, they're tough to wrangle. And they didn't want to do journaling, like, oh, this stuff's all hocus pocus. I don't have time. So every night we sit down for dinner as a family. It's pretty much a mandatory thing. And each of us recite two things or one to three things we're grateful for. And the irony behind it now is our 9-year old, the one that was the most resistant, now when we forget to do it, because, life happens and sometimes we're eating dinner and we're flying through and we forget to do our gratitude list, he'll actually raise his hand or speak up and say, hey, you can't get up. We forgot our gratitude doing our gratitude list. And it's funny, like how it institutionalized a habit, a routine, and they actually get a reward out of it. At least our 9-year old, he loves it. He likes hearing what people are grateful for. And talk about training the brain. Our kids are now using a lens to see the world with a different perspective. What can I be grateful for? The clothing they have, the little things. Because again, little things create big things. So you don't have to be grateful for winning the lottery or having a brand new car. It's the little things that matter, the things we often overlook. But hopefully with some of the lessons that I put out here today, you're able to be more mindful, to see those things, to harness them, to hold those thoughts about them longer and not let them go in one ear and out the other. Instead, let the negativity go in one ear and out the other. Let all the stuff you see on the news go in one ear and out the other. In fact, I challenge you not to watch the news as much. So many people watch the news for hours when they get home, hours in the morning and hours at night. You're hardwiring your brain to always look at the world through a lens, through doom and gloom and breakdowns. Now, I don't want you to have your head in the sand. Obviously, the news gives us relevant information. So it's maybe look at the local news so you can see what's going on in the communities and they don't have as much of the doom and gloom. Another habit would be calling a friend or family member, once a week. I know I did this for Trout in the year 2020. And on that year, unfortunately, I lost someone real close to me to COVID. And I felt bad because that person had moved to Alabama years ago. And I grew up with this person and we were best of friends, thick as thieves. And, when that happened, I felt like, wow, I can't believe I lost touch with him. Someone I have so many memories with, but because of the physical distance, we had an emotional distance. We just didn't talk as much. And when we did, we had a blast. But, typical guy, I don't want to call and talk to someone right now. I just want to sit and relax. But since COVID, now I make a phone call to one person a week that means a lot to me. It could even just be my mom, who's a widow this year, and she needs those calls. And I'm glad to oblige and help her. Another one would be reading 10 pages of nonfiction gang, each day. That was one of my reminders I put out there for you on an Outlook reminder. It says read for 5 to 10 minutes. One thing with human psychology that I found might be more successful with those that are anti-readers, if you want to call it that, is to read 3 pages. Instead of putting a time limit on it, because even a little time limit, like 3 to 5 minutes, can be daunting to some people. If you have an alert, it could be in the evening, maybe right when you're going to be laying in bed. It's good to read something right before bed. It changes the thoughts that are going, the hamster in the wheel from everything that happened at work. So I challenge you to have an Outlook reminder to try to read, let's say, 3 pages a day. I've done this with people I've coached, and now they're reading volumes of books a year. Because, man, I'm telling you, I'm 48 years old, and if I didn't start reading fluent or avidly out of college, I would be nowhere where I am today. We all read in college if we went to the 4-year program, and it was to get good grades and get out of school with a diploma. But too often, many of us graduated, and then we just dropped the reading habit because it wasn't mandated, it wasn't required. We weren't being measured on it or graded by it. But it's really important to be proactive and kind of feeding our brain with knowledge and not being reactive in life and just learning through experience. Experience alone is not going to help us. Experience is great, but we need to be proactive and we need to read on subjects that matter to us, whether it's personal development, team development, something specific to taxes if you're an accountant, whatever it may be. Try to institutionalize that, make it a daily habit. Trying to see here. This is where I'd ask people in the audience to speak up and say what little habits they might think to institutionalize and begin, or what habits they've already tried and started. But we can't do that today because we are virtual. I'm trying to see. I don't have any questions right now. So I'll wrap up. I have about 5 minutes, I think. I'll wrap up with the recruiting side. That would be self-serving, but I will be happy to talk recruiting because that's what we do here at JFC Global. So what I would pose to each of you is, why do you use recruiters anyways, right? Why am I going to pay a fee for this guy to get me somebody? I'll just, run an ad. I'll go on Indeed. I'll ask for referrals, all of which can help. The reason people use recruiters is because we institutionalize, we live by these micro habits day in and day out. We're recruiting passive candidates, people that aren't happy in their jobs. They're reaching out to us or they're referred to us by friends, family, coworkers, and we're having meaningful conversations with them and we're having them daily, day in and day out. So if you were to call us, we have people on the bench that usually we can get you someone within 48 hours that you've tried months through routine advertising and your own recruiting efforts. So as an HR personnel or a hiring manager, I would put a reoccurring Outlook reminder on your Outlook that you divide at least a half hour of your time a week. Start small, little by little, a half hour of your time each week to reach out through your LinkedIn network. We all use LinkedIn. So use your LinkedIn network, keep in touch with people that you admire, that you think are top talent. Maybe you met them at a seminar, you met them in an event, and you think, wow, I'd love to have that person on my team. Keep in touch with them. That's called proactive recruiting. That way, when you do have a need arise and you're looking to backfill a position or fill a newly created position, you're not starting from scratch. You're not behind the eight ball. You're already ahead of the game. You've already passed many milestones and base camps. You have now befriended this person and you know them well and they know you well, that it makes that conversation when you reach out and ask them if they'd be interested in a career change and joining you at your employer, it makes it that much easier and smoother. Too often, and I get it, HR personnel, you're spinning a lot of plates, a lot of plates. I honestly don't know how you do it. You're dealing with benefits, you're dealing with workers' comp, you're dealing with recruiting, you're dealing with policies, procedures. So you don't have the luxury that a recruiter does to do it day in and day out. But you do have the luxury to divide or to conquer it maybe a half hour of your time every week. Maybe do it on a Friday. Do it a day within your work week that you know is a softer period of your day. For me, it's usually a Friday. So if I were in HR, I would say every Friday from 9 to 10, I'm going to reach through my LinkedIn connection and I'm not recruiting. I'm not saying, hey, Joe, or hey, Mary, I have this position. I'm just reaching out to them and saying, hey, how are things going? Yeah, how was your holiday? I'm just creating that bond, that relationship. So when the time comes that I may need them to join my team and I want them to join my team, they know me very well and hopefully they like me and they're more inclined to hear me out and maybe make that move. Because let's be honest, the best employees, the top talent, the people that we all want on our team, they're already working for the most part. They're out there working right now. In fact, the best people on my team, the best people on your team, they might be getting contacted from people right now while we're on the seminar asking them, hey, do you think you might want to leave for another opportunity? So it's great to always keep your arms around both the internal employees because you got to protect the fort, obviously, but then to create that habit, maybe a half hour each week, that you're reaching out externally and building and fostering relationships with people that you potentially would like to have on your team in the future. If not on your team, at least have them in your inner circle that you can brainstorm with, collaborate with, and co-create solutions with. And now we're coming on the last 3 minutes here. I know I talk fast today for you all out there, and my apologies. I tend to talk much faster when I'm sitting in front of the screen than when I'm walking around on stage. But I do hope you had some nuggets of wisdom today. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I love hearing from people that have sat through or participated in any of my speaking engagements. I do offer free training and speaking, most often free, depending on my schedule, to local companies to train their departments, their executive teams. It's just something I like to do to give back to the community. And when I have the time to do it, which I carve out enough time to take on a limited list of people, it's self-fulfilling for me too. It helps me learn and it helps me feel like I'm giving back. So there's my information there. If you have further questions on micro habits, recruiting, or you just want to chat with me and keep me on your Rolodex, if you guys remember Rolodexes, keep me on it. I'm here to help you and serve you in any way I can. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this morning. Hopefully your heads aren't spinning from how much I threw at you in this short amount of time and how quick I talk. But it's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the speakers. They seem to be lined up with some real strength here today. I know I'll be enjoying it and watching it. And let's keep learning, guys. Let's pass those milestones and create those little habits. Little by little, a little becomes a lot. Thank you.